Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindsay, and I work in the Alumni Engagement Office here at McMaster. My colleagues and I are very excited to have you join us tonight. So a few logistics to start. Throughout the event, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box directly at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer them throughout the presentation. There will also be a brief survey at the end of the event, and we'd love your feedback. Now, I think we can agree that no matter where we are in the world, soup is one of those foods that always fosters feelings of comfort, familiarity, and home. This is the exact feeling our next two guests had when they launched the Burnt Tongue, a chain of restaurants in the Hamilton area known for delectable homemade soups and sandwiches. So without further ado, please welcome Leo Tsangarakis, a 2012 Mac grad, and co-founder Danny Robinson. They have a great lineup of recipes for you tonight, so let's get started. Over to you, Leo and Danny.
Hey guys, thank you so much.
Good evening.
Yeah, so we're gonna get started right away with this webinar. We have two soups for you today, a Masala Red Lentil and a parsnip soup. And I think we're gonna start right away with the parsnip soup, right Dan?
Yeah. Sweet. So we're gonna start with the parsnip soup, okay? This is a cream-based soup and it's gonna be a puree. I'm going to start by melting a little bit of butter, very gently, okay? No color on the butter, and even when I'm sweating my vegetables, I don't want any color on the vegetables either, because I really want this soup to turn out a brilliant white. So I'm going to begin with that.
Perfect. So what are you going to set the stove to, Dano?
I'm going to set it right now at probably a medium low.
Cool.
Okay, to it, I'm gonna add some celery, some parsley, some celery, some onions, and my peeled parsnips.
Sweet, so we've done a lot of the prep beforehand just so we could get through the seminar. So yeah, we have our sliced celery ribs, our sliced parsnips, and then our sliced onions. No need to dice anything here, right? Because everything's going to get pureed anyway?
No, everything's going to get pureed, yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, if you're working at home and you don't have a great immersion blender or anything like that, it might be wise to slice things a little thinner and smaller so they break down a little quicker. Or if you're working with a time constraint kind of thing, that will help things break down and soften faster.
Perfect.
Okay, so the butter's just melted a little bit. Perfect. And it's foaming, so I'm going to add my onions, my celery, my parsnips.
So everything right away?
Yeah. Then I'm going to let them soften. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit while watching it. And I'm going to gently salt it. And I'm going to add my cinnamon and nutmeg.
Perfect. So all that's in the recipe for everyone that they have at home.
Yeah.
This one's nice and simple, this recipe for sure. Okay, so everything's in the pot now, and you're literally just going to give it a stir and wait for them to what?
And I'm going to stir and I'm going to watch it, and cook it until they're softened. And then I'm going to add my stock to it, crank up the heat a little bit, bring it to a boil, then turn it down to a simmer, and then cook it until my vegetables are tender.
Okay, sweet.
And then when that's done, we'll puree it, and we'll add our cream, and we'll adjust the seasonings.
Okay, perfect.
This will be topped with some toasted walnuts, which
perfect.
we're going to start now too.
Yeah.
And then we'll go on to the Masala Red Lentil.
Okay, so you want to do the candied walnuts? Okay, sweet.
So for my candied walnuts, to the pot, I'm just going to melt some butter, add my walnuts along with my sugar and my cayenne, and I'm going to cook it on about a medium-high heat until they start to caramelize. And then once the nuts are toasted and the sugar's caramelized to them, I'm going to lay them out on a baking tray, separate them a little bit, let them cool so they don't all stick together.
Sweet. So we're going to do this in the pan, right?
Yep. Just a frying pan.
Your butter, chef.
Thank you.
Okay, sweet. I love this topping so much, though, too. It goes so well with the parsnip.
It's easy. Normally I wouldn't candy it, but we're on a cooking show, so I figured I'd let you do something extra. Because parsnips are sweet to begin with, just simply toasting your walnuts would be...
Yeah, I love the toasted walnuts, too, because the parsnip's already so sweet, you said.
And then we're going to pluck some fresh thyme.
Yeah, let's do that.
And top it with some extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, soups for us are like, obviously we make a lot of soups, but garnishes have really turned out to be like a really important part of our soup. Really kind of, elevate things, add some complexity to the soups. Like you said, with parsnip, it's already so sweet, but it's nice to add some savory elements too.
Yeah, this is a really easy soup to make, and when the parsnips are in season, it's dynamite.
Yeah, and I find like this kind of like general recipe that you do with the parsnips can be pretty much used with like almost any root vegetable for that matter. Yeah. This is definitely how I learned how to start cooking at the Burnt Tongue, because I'm not the chef, Dan is, and he's taught me a lot about soups over the years for sure, and this is definitely one of the first soups I learned how to do, because purees are truly simple in that sense.
Okay, I'm going to add my walnuts to my pan.
So you don't have to fully melt the butter or anything?
Oh, it's all going to cook and melt.
Cool.
I'm just starting it. And my sugar and my cayenne. And I'm going to let that cook down.
Sweet. What is parsnip season? So we find that parsnip season usually comes in late fall and winter and stretches through for the majority of winter. Parsnips are kind of cool because they leave them in the ground a little bit longer. And what happens is when you leave a root vegetable in the ground for longer, it starts to release its sugars as a survival method. So that's why parsnips are so naturally sweet, because they've been left in the ground over basically the cooler seasons of the growing season, for that matter, and then become super sweet. So they end up being like a vegetable that honestly the flavor is just all in there right away. Thanks, Leon. Never had a soup I didn't like. Question for when they have a moment to answer. Where did you get your inspiration, and when you come up with new soups? So where do you get your inspiration from, Dano? When you get your soups?
Well, I don't know. Soup for me, when I was a kid, it was I would go over to friends' houses for lunch during at lunchtime during school, and the mothers of the friends would always serve Campbell's soup and a grilled cheese. So it was just, and I was never more hungrier than lunchtime as a kid, and it was just always one of my favorite meals. So I decided that, you know what I mean, soup was something that I was going to do. I had worked in a lot of other restaurants, and soup making was always a standard that I held cooks to, because it really showed how you can develop flavors and stuff like that and cook economically and everything else. So it was just natural for me, and it's a very good money maker at any restaurant, and it's fun. I used to work at restaurants where the menus would be static a lot, and when we first came up with the Burnt Tongue, we would change our soups every day, so it was exciting for the staff that worked there and everything else, and it was always new flavors, and it was always great exposure for my staff too, that they got to work with all types of stuff.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
So for us, even for me though, like growing up in a European household, like every meal started with a soup. Every culture has their favorite soup, every country, every area. So it just gave us, like you said, a lot of room to kind of do some different recipes, like always, basically. And as Dan mentioned, we would do a soup every single day. We would change our menu to the point where I think last time I calculated it, we've done over 4,000 recipes ourselves. Obviously minor variations and stuff of ones. So tell us where we're at, Dan, and then I'll answer some more
Okay,
questions.
so our walnuts are caramelizing and crisping up, and our parsnips and vegetables are softening.
Okay, sweet.
Leo's plucked the thyme, and
That's
I think
it?
we're already on that, so we're going to move on to the Masala Red Lentil.
Okay, sweet. So just quickly, I'll answer some more of these questions. Leo, what was your major at McMaster? I don't think there's a BA in soupology. That is correct. This is the beginning of me getting soupology into McMaster, but we'll see what happens. I actually did my a BA in cultural anthropology, so studied a lot about nostalgia in culture, and what better restaurant to open with soup where everything is about nostalgia for sure. Dan, what herb are you breaking up and where is it going? So that's me, Leo. I'm breaking up some thyme, some fresh thyme, and that's just gonna go on top of the candied walnuts after we're done pureeing the parsnip soup. Okay?
What is your favorite soup? Or what's the most popular soup at the Burnt Tongue? Well, I think tomato is, and it's no surprise. I think tomato is one of the most popular soups in the world. But our potato purees are a close second, and my favorite soup, and it's a soup that we don't do because we're just not set up for it, is probably a really good French onion.
Yeah, we don't do that because we can't,
And
right?
most of our soup is takeaway and stuff like that. We just don't have the ability to gratin, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Well, what's my favorite soup? I think one of my favorite soups that we sell at the restaurant is the Senegalese peanut and yam. It's obviously a sweet potato puree with peanut butter and just a ton of spices, topped with some roasted peanuts, sriracha, and cilantro. That's definitely one of my favorite soups for sure. Okay, I'll go back to these questions in a second. Dan, where are we at now?
We're doing just fine. We're
Okay.
going to start the masala. I've turned on my pot. I'm going
Okay.
to get this my pot hot, then I'm going to add a little bit of oil to it.
Okay, so this one's gonna have no onions, right, Dan?
No onions.
Okay, sweet. I'll answer a question while you're doing that. So you're just getting some oil in the pan.
Yeah, I'm
heating it
getting
up.
my oil heating up nice and hot, and then I'm going to saute or fry some ginger, some garlic, and some serrano peppers.
Okay, sweet. So they'll have that recipe up there on the board too, so you guys can follow along with that. So how do we decide which flavor at each location? Kind of a tough question. Like we used to do, we used to update our soup menu every single day. What we found though over 3 locations was that it was really hard to maintain consistency and keeping soups fresh, because which ones would sell and which ones would not. So what we've been doing over the last year is creating a seasonal menu, changing our menu every 3 to 4 months, depending on kind of how things settle. So right now it's just been a lot of testing of what is selling and what is not, and making those adjustments. So it's really kind of just what is in season, what we're feeling, what we've noticed has been a top seller. Other reasons why you would pick a soup for a different location or anything?
I guess I mean the people in that location too. If I find more women frequent a certain location, I might do lighter soups.
Right.
If I find more men, I might do more meat-based or heavier soups kind of thing.
Right. Or even just downtown, we tend to cater to more of like a lunch squad, where Lock Street is definitely more of like a, kind of residential area.
Yeah.
So we tend to do a lot of more kind of, soups that you can take home versus soups that you would eat like at your office. Where are these questions? What do you suggest as a non-dairy alternative to cream? So for us, our main non-dairy option is coconut milk, and we tend to use it a lot in more exotic soups or Asian soups for that matter. But obviously you can substitute with oat milk, soy, almond. Just because we don't have too much experience with that, we don't know how really, they would turn out in our soups. So we have yet to really use any, non-coconut milk, non-dairy alternatives. So let us know what you do if you try that, because we're curious about that too. But coconut milk seems to be the most affordable for us, because oat milk and almond can get kind of crazy there after a while. So Dan, we mentioned that for this soup, we want to soften the onions and parsnips, but not take on any color. Are there any soups where you would want your onions or veg to take on color?
For
you
sure.
just mentioned French onion even there.
Yeah, it's soups like French onion or beef-based soups or any types of soups that tomato or ethnic soups where I do actually want some color on the vegetables for flavor. Also, when I am doing potato soups or white soups, I just like to keep it very white, just for presentation purposes too.
Yeah. Okay, so where are we at with the parsnip right now?
The parsnips, they're cooking down. I think I'm going to add my stock in moments.
Okay, sweet.
My walnuts are coming along. I'm frying my serranos, ginger, and garlic right now.
Okay.
Okay, once that you really get the waft of that, then I'm going to cook out my spices. I will add my spices and then cook them out for a couple minutes.
Okay.
It's important to do that in case they're contaminated or anything like that. And then that helps bring out the flavor in them as well.
So like the aromatics,
Yeah,
the same thing with this, with the ginger, the
garlic.
garlic.
And it can also kill any bacteria or anything like
okay,
that.
cool. I didn't know that. Okay, sweet. Let's do another question. Can I substitute water or other juices for traditional stock?
Yeah, I most frequently I just use water, and then I use salt. Especially if I'm using a lot of spices or herbs, or my vegetables are really in season and very flavorful.
Right.
So
and juices, I'm not sure what that means, but
juices,
essentially.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of soups where I'll add apple juices or carrot juices, or V8 is a very good juice that I use too, and especially tomato juice too, because a lot of soups
Right.
call
Oh, of
for
course.
it.
Yeah, and you even use some of the clam juice
Yes,
and the clam
yeah.
chowder.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. Okay, so Dan, you're just working on those carb onions. What else we got here? How did your business strategy change with the pandemic? Glad you're still growing strong and expanding. Thank you. So what happened was I was actually in Italy the summer before the pandemic hit. And when I came back, I was noticing a lot of the pivots that the Italian restaurants were doing as I was back in Canada when things were really getting bad in Italy. So what we decided to do actually, first off, was take a poll with all our staff to see who was comfortable working and wasn't working. And at that time, when nobody really understood what was going on, none of us really felt comfortable working. So we shut down every restaurant, and the only people to work for the company were Dan and I, the co-founders, and our 3 other business partners. And what we decided to do was bag our soups into 1.5 liter bags and then do free home delivery. So what we were doing every day literally was taking in orders, and then each of us would get a route of 10 to 20 people and then just deliver our soup every day. And we did that about for the first 2 or 3 months, and then every month or so after those 2-3 months, we would take in a new poll with the staff, see who was comfortable working, and then we slowly started opening up our restaurants again. Yeah, but since then we've just been focusing on our takeout and on these 1 liter bags that you can purchase at all our locations. Any update on the cooking, or should I keep answering?
I put my stock into my parsnips, then I'm going to turn it up a little bit and then cook them down.
Okay.
And then I'll puree that. My nuts are done.
Perfect.
So I'm going to lay them out on a baking sheet.
Sweet. I'll show them what they look like on this thing. Sweet. So I'll move this over. All right, so if you guys want to see that. So basically this is our walnuts now, butter, sugar, a little bit of cayenne. Obviously they're super hot right now, so we're just going to put them to the side and let them cool down. And that's that. Okay, perfect. Okay, so you got the stock in the parsnip now.
Yep. Stock in the parsnips. I'm going to fry up my spices.
Perfect. Not to offend you, chef, but is there a substitute for serrano peppers? Only because I have everything else on hand.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to you. I use serrano specifically for the heat in this dish to give it a little bit of a bite, but you can use a milder chili, like a jalapeno or anything like that.
Right.
But that's up to you too. Even a poblano or a green pepper or any type of red chili, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It won't alter the flavor too much.
Okay, sweet. I'll get another question going then. Do you have a program for charity? Thoughts for a donation program? Buy a soup, donate a soup. That's an interesting concept for sure. We haven't done anything like that directly, but what we have done in the past is so many times over the pandemic, one thing that we did was a lot of our food distributors would come to us with a lot of kind of unpurchased stock that restaurants were not able to purchase anymore because a lot of them were shutting down. So what we did was we started middlemaning these situations where distributors would try and give us free food. We would take all that food and we donate it to places like Living Rock or any other kind of youth center or whatever downtown. So we've done that. We've also done Soup Fest year over year since we've opened. One of those years we even went in and did a 6-week program where we taught at-risk youth how to cook soup, how to make their own soup, and they actually ran our soup booth at Soup Fest and raised a bunch of money on their own. So we've been working really closely with Living Rock, helping at-risk youth, and that's what we've been doing as far as charity goes for us, yeah.
Okay, so I sauteed my spices, my ginger, my garlic serranos. I added my stock and my washed lentils. Now, I usually cook the soup for about a half an hour and let my lentils break down before I add my tomatoes or any sort of salt or anything like that. I find some acids and some salts can slow down the cooking process of lentils, so I try and do that afterwards once I know the lentils are tender.
And we're using dry lentils, right?
We are using dried lentils.
And you wash them why, Dan?
Well, there's, in my experience, I've opened bags of lentils where they're full of bugs or they're full of
Rocks, I've seen
rocks
even,
and seeds. It is important to go through your lentils and wash them properly, yeah.
Sweet. Oh, here's a question. Do you make your own stock or do we purchase stock? So
We do
it's a little bit
both.
of both. Yeah.
Because of the volume of soup we do, it's hard to keep up with all stocks all the time. If I am making specialty soups that I think really require and benefit from a beef stock or a chicken stock, I will make the effort to do that. Again, I use bases and stuff very sparingly. A lot of the flavor I just derive from the cooking process. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So for the most part, the parsnip is ready to go. Just we're waiting on the parsnips to soften up a bit, and then
Yes.
we're going to puree it?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So
I'll
that's
give about
that.
20-25 minutes on the lentils. Then I'll add my tomatoes, my peanut butter, my coconut milk, and then I'll finish it off with some cilantro and lemon juice and then season it
Brilliant.
up.
And then we have our garnish ready for our parsnip. The
Yeah.
walnuts are cooling.
Yeah.
We have the fresh thyme plucked. And then all we have to do is wait for the lentils to cook,
Yeah.
the parsnips to cook.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Now this lentil soup on its own is light meal. You can serve it over rice and that will make a more substantial meal. We're gonna also top it with a Raita.
Yeah, which we'll make
Yeah.
in a little bit. Yeah, cool. So I'll do some more questions here. Post-pandemic, what are your expansion plans? Any consideration for franchising? Well, if you're interested, email me. But no plans yet for franchising. Any location that we are going to be opening will be under our control for the moment. But we are looking to expand. We found that the burnt tongue seems to be a good concept that works in a lot of locations. So we've been looking around. We always tell our customers, if you see a location, let us know. But we've been looking in Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph, St. Catharines. People have been asking us to come to Toronto, but we'll see where we end up next. But there definitely are some expansion plans. Are any soup flavors inspired by your time in Italy? No, not necessarily. Do we do any Italian soups? Really?
Yeah, sure. We do a ton.
Oh,
I mean,
Italian
everything
sausage
from-
and rapini we do.
Yeah. We have a lasagna soup.
The lasagna soup. We even do our
We've
tomato
done a lot of
torte.
Italian vegetable lentils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't do Italian wedding soup, right? Why is that?
We have done Italian wedding soup. In fact, I don't think there's a soup out there that we haven't tried at least once, unless it's very rare or requires a certain ingredient that I can't get my hands on. But yeah, we have done a lot of Italian soups. Yeah.
Do you recommend various wine pairings with different soups? Love the idea of soup feast. Honestly, I'm not much of a wine drinker. I just started exploring wine a lot this year, but not enough that I would have personally any recommendations for wine and soup. But what about you?
No, I still generally eat soup at lunch, and I usually not dipping into the wine at that hour. But so no, I usually I don't pair soup with wine. I don't.
Well, here's a question actually that I asked you earlier. Can you use canned lentils instead of dry lentils? So Dan, you told me you have little experience using canned lentils, right?
I do, and it's because of the volume we go through.
Yeah.
And opening cans and stuff like that when I can just dig into a bin or a bag kind of thing. But at home, I think for convenience, it wouldn't matter if you use them.
Yeah, I don't think so. I've tried to use them before, honestly,
Yeah.
to make soup, and it didn't really turn out the same way as the dried lentils. Only because of the thing that you mentioned is that dried lentils seem to impart their flavor so much more into the soup stock rather than a canned lentil where the flavor is kind of trapped in the lentil itself. So feel free to try and use the dried or the canned lentils, but use them much later in the process, just because you'll find they might even become mushy and not really the ideal texture, where from the dried lentil you get to the texture that you want versus worrying about the texture becoming more and more loose as you start cooking your soup. So hopefully that helps you. Not a question, but thanks for opening in Dundas in such a cool traditional Dundas location. Love what you've done with the space. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, so Braden, who used to own Taylor's Tea Room, his mom owned it before him, had reached out to us. Obviously, the pandemic had changed a lot of his plans and asked if we wanted to move into that space, and we found it was going to be a great fit for us just because it was, such a well-known establishment beforehand, and we wanted to do the place justice. So thank you for that comment, and really appreciate that. Okay, so where are we at now? Is this boiling or simmering now?
It did come to a boil. I turned it down to a simmer.
Okay, brilliant. And this one, same thing?
Yeah, it came up, and then now it's simmering, and the lentils are going to be about 20-25 minutes.
Okay, sweet. And then we got these still cooling.
Yeah.
Let's see where these are at. Okay, sweet.
Thank you for giving us a sneak peek of your behind the scenes. I have a peanut allergy. What would you recommend as a substitution for your recipes with peanut butter?
Almond butter, I guess,
Sure.
right? That's my go-to. I love almond butter even more than
peanut butter. And I do think
butter.
there is a thing out there, like pea butter or something.
Yeah, there's other alternatives for sure. I think it's kind of very similar to the dairy question. Like, if you're already have a peanut allergy, I'm sure you've used a lot of peanut butter changes or alterations, right? And I would say whatever your favorite is in that sense, apply it to your soup, and I'm sure it'll work out. And same kind of goes with the non-dairy options, I think, too. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Anne from Dundas wants to know, what quantity of soup do you make in one batch?
I guess depending on the popularity of this soup, we have about 80. I think our biggest pots are about 100 liters. So we're pretty much rocking them to the top, especially with the tomatoes. So yeah, we're usually making about 80 liters at a time, and up to sometimes 600 liters a day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 80 of these basically in one batch. And how many times do you cook tomato a week?
I cook tomato every day.
So you make about 500 liters, 600 liters of tomato a week?
Sure, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and sometimes twice.
Sometimes twice?
Yeah.
Do you freeze and sell your soups? How about smaller portion soups for homemaking so that you're using See that you're using cauldrons. Okay, so we do not freeze our soups, but we do sell our soups, like I mentioned, in 1 liter portions in resealable bags, and those get delivered to our locations every Thursday. So Dan, from the 30 soups that he's creating across 4 locations, has picked 12 of his favorite that are the most kind of sellable and for resealable purposes. So we do sell those 1 liter bags at our locations. So yeah, we totally recommend going to try those out because it's a 1 liter portion to buy. And is there a favorite / recommended soup pot you use? Oh yeah, any like soup pot recommendations or?
No, the bigger the better. I don't. They can get really expensive, and we have about 20 on the go or something.
Yeah.
As long as they're not too thin and they have a solid base which conducts the heat well, then I'll pick them up. You know what I mean?
And at home, what about at home?
At home?
Same thing.
Well, I guess yeah. It all depends on the quality of your pot. I mean, if you buy inexpensive, you run the risk of the heat not distributing evenly and having hot spots on your pans and then wearing out and stuff like that. It's always important to have a solid base. Yeah.
Cool. Have you thought about publishing a cookbook? Yes, we have actually. We've never actually took the full leap into doing it, but we have been gathering recipes over the years and many photos of different soups that we've done. So it's definitely in the work. I'm hoping that something maybe for this coming Christmas or the next one. So yeah. What are your locations? Okay, so Dan and I worked at a restaurant in Westdale Dan started there about 2006 or 5 or something, and I started working there in 2008 or 9. And Dan and I met there, and this is where we first started doing our prep for Burnt Tongue #1, which is at the corner of James and Cannon, 10 Cannon Street. So we opened that one in 2013. Then we opened our second location on Locke Street, 182 Locke, in 2016. Then we opened our King West location, which we call the Westdale location. That one was opened in summer of 2019. And then we just opened Dundas about 3 months ago, in December of 2021. So that's our 4 locations right now. So, okay, Dano, where are we at now? How are these parsnips doing?
The parsnips will probably be pureeing in about 10 minutes.
Sweet.
The lentils, they're absorbing some of the water. I add a little bit of stock as needed, just a touch, just to cover them every once in a while. But they are soon going to be ready for the tomatoes and the coconut milk and the peanut butter.
Okay, sweet. So
Yeah.
for the parsnip, though, for them to be done, like
Yeah.
everyone's just looking for them literally to be
Yeah,
like...
so they fall apart. Parsnips can be quite fibrous, so you do really want to cook them to get that smooth texture in your soup.
Okay, sweet.
I think that's very important, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the questions we got prior to doing the webinar was, do you recommend investing in an immersion blender at home? And I remember we were talking about this because...
It's funny, at home, unless you're gonna purchase a big and powerful one, I find they don't do the job very well. I really don't. So, if you're going to do purees at home, I recommend just a high-powered blender.
Like something like
thing.
one of these
Yeah.
guys, eh?
They seem to get more powerful the bigger they are, these immersion blenders, and we use very large ones at work, and they do the job. I just find the small ones, and I'm a bit of a stickler for the purees to be as smooth as they can. So I would recommend a blender over an immersion blender.
Yeah, like I have this
No,
one
I
at home.
haven't. Yeah, I haven't played around with all of them. Just the experience I've had with the smaller ones.
Yeah, I found like this one, I've done some purees at home. It
Yeah.
does the job, but it
Yeah.
definitely takes forever. Where something like this, I definitely could, you know, attack in smaller batches and then obviously pour out, but obviously without having it lidded, so you don't have those classic scenarios there where your soup explodes everywhere. Sweet. Okay, sweet. Do you ever roast the red lentils first?
I don't. I haven't roasted the red lentils first. Only because sometimes my recipes I'm using 30, 40, 50 cups worth sometimes, and for me to take that time to do it at work sometimes can be a little time consuming. Mm-hmm. But I have roasted stuff like barleys and stuff like that, and I do think they lend like a toasty flavor to some dishes. Yeah, a lot of the stuff I do is for convenience and to make my staff's job easier at work. We have quite a bit to do, and sometimes not a lot of time to do it in, but if I'm doing a specialty soup or I'm cooking at home, I certainly would take the time out to do it because I think there is benefit in it.
Yeah, it definitely adds like some complexity for sure, eh? But yeah, like obviously you heard one soup of 20 soups that or 30 soups that we make this season. You know what I mean? That's at 100 liters, 80 liters of soup. That's a lot of soup and a lot of work. Like, even like, what was it? Like, how many onions do you guys, like pounds of onions do you guys go through a week? I remember that stat is like insane.
Yeah, onions is a big thing. It like provides a base for probably 90% of our soups. So we go through a lot. Okay, the lentils are very close, and they've broken down nicely. So I'm gonna add my tomatoes to them now.
Perfect. Okay. So tomatoes to lentil?
Yeah, and I'm gonna stir that up a little bit and let it cook down a little bit, and then I'll add my coconut milk and peanut butter.
Okay, sweet. So we have some time still?
Yeah, we could probably make the raita.
The raita? Okay, sweet. I brought all the stuff for the raita. I'll do one more question and then I'll start that. Sorry if you mentioned this already, but do you make the soups at a central location and ship them out, or are they made at each location?
When we first started, we were making them at each location. For quality purposes and everything else in management, we had to move into one commissary kitchen where I was able to oversee everything, and it was just easier. So we do make them all out of one location now and ship them out.
Yeah, that was tough. That was like one of our biggest growing pains for sure. Because when we opened up Cannon Street, it was simple. It was Dan and I like this next to each other every day. He cooked, I would work the cash. Then once we opened Locke Street, we thought, oh, we should, you know, have another chef at this location. And it worked out well, but it was just like minor differences in consistency that, you know, just for people who wanted truly to kind of keep this, you know, mom and pop kind of shop kitchen, it was really tough for Dan and I to kind of keep that consistency, especially the chef. So when we opened up King Street, we really invested the majority of our money in having a commissary kitchen so that Dan, the co-founder and head chef, would literally be making every soup and making sure that the flavor was great going out. So we're really happy with that move. It's really even helped us, you know, progress in our retail bags, the bags that I've mentioned over and over again today. And it's just really helped with consistency and really helped with our growth as a restaurant for sure. Marianne, can't wait to sample at your Dundas location. Heartwarming to share how Brandon reached out. Thanks. Do you source your veggies locally for your soups? So that's a mixture of an answer.
It is a mixture.
Because, well, we're in Canada, so it's really tough to have seasonal veggies all the time. But we do our best for sure to buy locally grown veggies. But one actually really fantastic story is that when we opened Cannon Street, obviously we're really close to the Hamilton Farmers Market, And one of the vendors there, Buttram Farms, is run by Gary Buttram and his family, and he was one of our neighbors on James Street, just around the corner from our Cannon location. So Gary approached us about cooking his squash for our squash soups over the winter, to the point where now that relationship has grown so much that Gary actually dedicates a plot of land on his farm for the squash that he grows directly for us. So it's a very massive type of squash called a Maxim butternut. So Maxim being massive, obviously, and butternut squash. So Gary literally used to deliver the squash in a wheelbarrow around the corner, but now he literally has his own delivery truck and everything. And how many pounds of squash should we go through during that season?
Well, I was going through probably 500 to 700 pounds a week.
Yeah, of squash, literally grown just for us from Gary. So yes, we do try our best to do locally sourced vegetables. We've even done garlic scapes that have been locally grown, and just other things, obviously, but like directly to us, it happens quite a bit too. Should we do a little, are we still in the same kind of zone?
I added my coconut milk and my peanut butter and my tomatoes to my masala.
Okay. What was the point of, like, at what point did you do that?
Well, after my lentils had broke down.
Right.
I was assured that they were cooked, and I was able to add all my other ingredients now.
Wow, this smells so good in here. I love peanut butter in soup so much. Okay.
Now, I didn't take my own advice with the parsnip soup. I put a little bit of color on it.
Oh, no.
But I was talking to you guys. But
it's all right. Hopefully
it's all
we get
right.
it.
It'll turn out white. Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. It happens. Okay, what kind of onions did you use? Vidalia or cooking in this?
For this one, I just used a colossal cooking onion.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. I do, if I'm going to make a soup like a Vidalia onion soup, or an onion soup where the onion is the star of the soup, then I'll use a Vidalia onion or a sweeter onion kind of thing. But for the majority, I just use cooking
Yeah,
onions.
and even like a mixture at that point is super good, right? Okay, should we start the Raita then?
Yes, you should.
So what should I start with first? Does it really matter, or all the ingredients at once?
No, you can throw it all together.
Okay, cool. So we got the serrano peppers. I'll start with here, right into our bowl.
What would be some examples of specialty soups? Well, soups that I make in small batches on occasion are stuff like lobster bisque, or like a duck soup, or something that requires a lot of procedure and expense kind of thing. Any type of Asian soup or something like that that
complex.
I do. Anything that might be out of my comfort zone a little bit, or I want to experiment with, I will start in a smaller batch and then scale. So we do them on occasion, cheddar nail soups, or I don't know what.
Yeah, but even the fish soups that you do on
Yeah,
the
the
weekends,
fish soups
the
and stuff like
chowders.
that.
Yeah.
The dilemma I deal with is most of my soups sit in a well for service. So I have to make sure they're stable, and they don't require too many ingredients where a prolonged temperature might sort of ruin them.
Yeah,
So
like a split.
I do have to work within my means. Yeah.
Sweet. So I put the serranos in. I put the onions in. I'm gonna put the cumin and coriander in. Then I'm gonna go ahead and put our cukes in. Okay, we're gonna add a little bit of lime juice, all in the recipe there for you. And then we have our chopped up cilantro and mint. I'm just gonna leave a little on the side to make sure. And then we're doing a 1 liter of full fat yogurt. Sweet.
Notice prep happening at Dundas location. Do your branches prep for Western location? By the way, your kale Caesar dressing is the bomb. Oh, thanks. Some of the locations do prep. They do prep that they can handle. The openers can handle. But all the dressings and kind of stuff that requires a little more finesse gets all done out of main kitchen.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, like Dan's saying, like all our dressings, any sauces, soups obviously are all made at our main commissary kitchen, but the type of the prep that the staff do on site is, getting the kale prepared, grilled cheese sandwiches, anything that needs to be fresh on site, chopping cilantro, cutting carrot sticks, anything like that. Obviously, our Cannon and Lock locations press their own fresh burgers, chip their own fries, fresh daily. So yeah, anything that needs to be done on site that can't be transferred definitely gets done on location. Wow, this Raita smells amazing. Okay, that was so easy, Dan. Sweet. Wow. Is that Greek yogurt or regular? This is Greek yogurt.
Yeah, I'm gonna check the parsnips. They're
Okay.
close, maybe about 5-6
Yeah,
minutes.
when you do it, show here so we can see what they look like too, maybe for those.
The what? The parsnips?
Yeah, when you show how soft it is.
They're close to being done. The lentil soup would be done in 5 minutes too.
Sweet. Those are pretty fast then, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. We got our Raita here. Leave that here for our topping. I'm gonna get one of these little bowls. For the thyme, sorry, just behind you. Sweet. Okay, toppings. These are almost ready too. Okay.
Any plans for chilled summer soups? Yeah. We always experiment with chilled summer soups, especially gazpachos, which tend to be one of the favorites. And I think last summer we did a Lithuanian chilled beet soup, which was very popular.
I can never
very
pronounce
good.
that. Yeah,
So,
the Lithuanian
yeah.
community in
Yeah.
Hamilton was really stoked about that.
So every summer, yes, do expect to see some new chilled soups. They're not as popular, but people who like them, and sometimes they're quite refreshing. on
Yeah,
some of
I
the-
find it's like one of those things that I always find is requested a lot and
Yeah.
asked for,
Yeah.
but once we put it on the menu, it
Yeah.
tends to not really,
Yeah.
be pulled as much as we thought
Yeah.
when it was
Yeah.
being requested. Yeah.
Do you use butter when you were sauteing your veggies? Yeah, a lot of soups I do start with butter. Again, I careful not to burn the butter, especially if I do a lot of roux-based soups or cream-based soups. I generally start with butter. There are a lot of brothy soups that I do use butter for too, but if you use too much, the presentation become a little bit oily or greasy, so I do find myself skimming.
Yeah. Yeah, that is like the skimming I've noticed a lot. Okay. Yeah, we did.
Okay, so I think I'm going to season up my lentil now. I'm going to add my cilantro and my lemon juice.
So the cilantro right into the soup, eh?
Yeah. I think it helps with the flavor. And then I do top it with some extra cilantro. I'm one of those guys that really likes cilantro. I know it can be polarizing.
That was one of our
but,
questions too.
yeah.
For those that don't love cilantro,
Well, yeah,
can we
especially
put?
I think anything like chives or green onions that are kind of neutral.
What about
but
something like a
still
Thai basil or
provide
something
a little
like that?
bit of bite. You know what I mean, or tang.
Cool. All right, so we're like on the finish line here for sure. Here, I'll put these in.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave your spoon here. I'm gonna get these walnuts ready. Oh wow, these really hardened up. All right. Wow, these are hard now. Oh man, these smell so good. This was so easy, eh, Dan? Okay, I got some of these. I'll just put them aside so I don't have to use them all.
Okay, lentils pretty much done.
Sweet.
I just simply seasoned it with some salt and pepper.
Okay.
There's so much flavorful stuff in there that it doesn't need much.
Okay, I'm gonna go behind you, chef. Grab this ladle. Leave this here for you. Just grab these bowls.
Okay, we'll check on the doneness of our parsnips here. They seem pretty good, pretty soft.
I got the
Let's stick a
bowls
fork in them.
here for you.
All right, I'm gonna
sweet.
move off camera and buzz this.
Okay, you've given us some good tips. Anything we should avoid doing? Have you seen some common mistakes? I'll wait till chef is done moving this soup here.
Yeah, sure. Common mistakes. A lot of them happen with seasoning. If you over season, I do season throughout the cooking process, but it's very gradually, and then I usually season at the end. It's very hard once you've over seasoned or over salted something to fix it. There are certain methods you can do, but it often requires extending your dish or making it larger than you want it to be. With me, and I find a lot of cooks that I deal with, consistency is really important for me. If purees are too thin, or if there's not a lot of solids versus liquids and stuff like that. These are common mistakes that sometimes you don't, when you're enjoying a bowl of soup, you don't think it's worth its money and stuff like that. And simply, because of the size of pots we do and the fact that we're using lentils in the soups, if you're not careful and focused on what you're doing, you can burn big pots of them, and it has happened. It doesn't happen frequently, but when it does, I mean, that's 60 to 80 liters of a soup.
You're not getting back.
Yeah.
How do you clean the pan after you candy the walnuts? I refuse to candy anything because I don't want to deal with the pan afterwards. Honestly, we found that the pans, we have some pretty good scrubbies. We can get them off pretty well.
Another really good trick is you can just let it cool down a little bit, put some water in it, and then bring it to a boil with some water, and then that usually lifts everything off.
Yeah, I've heard even baking soda and vinegar helps a lot of times too.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that helps you. You should start candying some things. It'll be really good. Okay, so Dan, you're pureeing now?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, Dan's pureeing now, which is great. It's gonna thin up the soup. Here, I'm gonna bring you your cream, chef, so you have it on the side here too. This is usually my favorite part. What soups are good for freezing? Yeah, so Dan and I actually talked about this before we got here too, because we tend to not freeze our soups at all. We just have before to save a soup for a picture or something like that, but nothing to eat after. But we find that soups that are don't have dairy in them tend to freeze really well, because once you thaw a dairy soup and then heat it up again, they usually tend to split a lot. The fats will separate and the soup just won't seem as awesome anymore. So we usually tend to recommend freezing vegan soups, soups without any like flour or dairy in them. Anything that's usually pretty light and veg-based and doesn't have any dairy is usually your best bet. People do a lot of chili too. Chili seems to be one of the most frozen soups, or chilies, I guess, that I'm aware of. So you added the cream in now, Dan?
I did, and it's slightly thicker than I want it to be.
Right.
Even with the addition of cream, so I'm just gonna add a little more water to it.
Water? And obviously you could add more cream as well if that's your thing, or milk if you want to avoid the fatness, but still have the kind of dairy, creamy nature for sure. So if you were at the kitchen right now, would you use cream or milk if you had this situation?
The parsnip soup?
Yeah, if you had this
I
at the
added
kitchen.
10% cream initially, so I would either thin it out with milk, but I think the amount of cream in it is enough, and plus it started with a little bit of butter, so I probably would use water.
Water?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I have a good question here for you too. Have you ever made a soup and then decided you would never make that soup again? If yes, what soup and why?
Every time I propose a new menu, that happens.
Yeah. Can you think of the last one that you dropped?
No, but without pointing fingers, we
We used to
had
have,
a lot
when
of
we,
soups,
in our first
you know what I mean?
year,
Yeah.
we had a lot of soups that we called them runaway soups because they basically ran away from us. You know, seasoning would happen, some sort of consistency change, and then we just couldn't reel it back in. And as much as soup is like a great thing and everyone enjoys it, there's nowhere to hide in soup. If you mess up a soup or if something is off in that soup, like that's it. That's all you get, and there's no turning back. You can't take something out. You can't pair it with something else. So no soups to name because they never were given a name. They're just gone now. We had dinner tonight from your Dundas. Excellent flavor on each soup and great sandwiches too. Thank you for opening here, all caps, Dan.
Oh, it's great to hear. Always
Do you
great to
use
hear.
unsalted butter for your soups?
Yes.
Okay, sweet.
Only use unsalted butter for my soups. I find that helps, especially with my staff that are cooking some soups sometimes, just so things don't end up too salty. And I just prefer the flavor of unsalted butter.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so this one's pureed now.
Yeah, it's pureed enough. Yeah.
Okay. So we definitely got a little color on it.
Tiny bit more,
Yeah, I think so
and
too,
I think we're good to garnish.
Yeah, because that's a big thing for us too, consistency. We find that our puree soups, we tend to, I don't want to say on the thinner side, but they're definitely not thick purees. The reason for that being is that once they sit in the well for hours on end, they tend to thicken up again. And we choose to really like our soups to start off on the thinner side and then get thicker as the day goes on. But yeah. Okay, sweet, dude. So we have all our toppings there. Wow, this soup is so good.
Okay, which one do you want to present first?
Should we do this one maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do the lentil. Here, I'll take the ladle. Okay, sweet. Wow, we've poured so many soups over the years. Okay, wow, this one looks so good, guys. Okay, so this is the Masala Red Lentil. And Dan, you were saying that we usually serve this type of soup with rice, and obviously if you want to make this more of a hearty meal at home, pair it with a rice or any pulse or anything like that.
And for a light lunch, it's
Yeah.
I think it's substantial.
Okay,
So-
sweet. So now we're gonna top it with the Raita,
Sure, yeah, just
and that's
a little
it.
dollop.
All this Raita, eh?
Yeah. We made an awful lot, but
It's okay, we'll use it at the restaurant.
yeah.
Okay, sweet.
And then a little bit more cilantro. You can also top it with toasted cumin seeds or nigella seeds or anything like that. And if you don't prefer cilantro, green onion or cilantro.
Yeah, we do crispy chickpeas even.
Crispy chickpeas, yeah. Crispy
Okay, I'm gonna
onions,
hop into
everything
this
else,
then,
yeah.
actually. Yeah, so it's nice. It's got a little bit of heat to it. The Raita cools it down. The lentils are cooked perfectly. The peanut butter, I swear, in these lentil soups is like my favorite thing. It's just so savory and nutty, and I love this soup. Done.
Done, yeah.
That one's beautiful.
Okay, we'll do the parsnip.
Yeah, let's do the parsnip. Okay, so this one's great, right? Like this is so minimal, refined in nature, but like
and
so
it's just,
tasty.
scent it a little bit with cinnamon and nutmeg, so it's
gonna
got
rinse
a
this
little bit of a warming feel to it.
Sorry, Dano.
The parsnips are nice and sweet, and again, I probably wouldn't recommend an extra large of that, but a small or medium is really nice, or a starter dinner soup. These parsnip soups are really good for.
All right. You want me to do it?
Sure.
Where are you? All right. So yeah, definitely a little bit of color, but nothing that we would be mad at. But definitely, we've definitely seen
Well,
some whiter
yeah.
parsnip soups.
Myself.
Okay. Bring this back. Okay. This one's gonna get the candied walnut. I'm gonna crush this, sorry
break it
guys,
up a
for
bit.
using my hands here, but it's just for us. Okay, so candied walnuts, sweet. A little bit of fresh thyme, sweet.
Yeah, and give her a little glug of,
That's it.
yeah.
Okay, let's do this one. So it looks really nice. Any guest would be stoked to see that at your dinner table. It's good. It's sweet. I love parsnips. They just do it themselves. And that olive oil is so good too.
Yeah, easy dinner.
That's it.
Impress people with that.
All right, so that's it, guys. We did 2 soups. Let's see if there's any questions here we can do. We've type of peanut butter do we use? I don't even know.
Roberts.
Roberts, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
What is done with the soup left over at the end of the day? There's actually very little to no soup left over anymore. There's definitely a lot of more soups left over when we would change our soup menu every day, only because we would stop serving them like a day after, essentially, because we would never put a soup on more than twice to reheat it. But now, because we've really updated even our packaging style, so our soups are actually contained in sous vide bags now. And for that reason, we're able to heat up smaller batches of soup and constantly have our soup to be put on kept fresher. So right now, we're happy to say that we have like next to no soup left over at the end of the day. And if there is, the staff usually take it home and either eat it themselves or give it to their families. Yeah. And that's it. So we did 2 soups, Masala Red Lentil, which we tend to serve over rice, topped with the Raita, as well as the parsnip soup that we topped with our candied walnuts, fresh thyme, and olive oil, and super simple. And like we said, that parsnip soup, you can, play off it. You can put carrots instead of parsnips, or you can always...
Yeah, you can change the profile any way you like. You can put ginger in it. You can... I just prefer this. It's just nice and simple and elegant.
For sure. So if there's any other questions before we go, let us know. Other than that, thanks for joining us. And any chance you guys are doing another demo in the autumn, hopefully.
Yeah, I didn't mind this at all.
I kind of liked it, actually. Okay, sweet. Well, thanks so much, guys. And that's it for us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leo and Chef Dan. That was amazing. I know I'm definitely hungry, and I'm sure everybody at home is. So thank you for making those wonderful soups and sharing some tips with us. And thank you to Daniel and Seb in the background, who was videoing everything for us. And thank you, folks, for joining us tonight. Just to let you know again, there will be a survey at the end of this webinar, and we'd really appreciate your feedback so that hopefully we can have Leo and Chef Dan back in the autumn. Have a good night, everyone.